At retirement planning versus for retirement planning. In this episode, we are going to address the question, what planning should I do just prior to retiring? It's not what you think. So my name's Doug Andrew, and I've been a financial strategist and a retirement planning specialist for more than 45 years. And I'm going to teach you in this episode what I have found. A lot of retirees make the mistake of thinking what they did for retirement is the same that they should do throughout retirement. No, at retirement planning is totally different than maybe what you did for retirement. Let me illustrate here on this little flip chart. I have found that most people, when they approach retirement, will have generally 4 different buckets that they draw from for retirement income in whatever ratio that they choose. So for example, most people that came to me at retirement had most of their money. In fact, they were way too top heavy in this particular bucket. This would be your traditional IRAs, 401ks. These are yet to be taxed vehicles that are most traditional in the market, but people would have their money in the market. And I would go, what are you thinking? You should, at least 5 years prior to retirement, get the majority of the money out of here, out of the market where it is not going to be volatile, where you can possibly lose. You need predictable income. And you cannot get predictable income if your money's in the market because of the whipsaws that take place. In fact, there's not a financial firm around that will be able to legitimately show you predictable income if your money is in the market. But a lot of people had their IRAs or 401ks, which were tax deferred, and they thought they were going to be in a lower bracket when they retired. So we had to roll money out of this bucket into maybe these other 3 buckets before retiring. And so if you have already retired, it's not too late. But the sooner you do this, the better off you will be. But most people are too top heavy in that one. Now there's 3 other buckets that I'll talk about. This one here is real estate. Some people like to have money in real estate, in non-owner occupied rental income properties, whether they're single resident homes that they own and they rent out, duplexes, apartments, commercial strip malls, whatever it is. This can be a good resource, but a lot of times in retirement, it's not what people thought it was going to be. It's still extremely management intensive, and they don't want to be landlords anymore. Taking out the trash and fixing toilets and evicting tenants, they didn't think retirement was going to be so management intensive, but they thought this was the cat's meow when they started acquiring the real estate. Some people, they just want to own their home. This bucket down here has to do with your guaranteed income. So if we were talking about guaranteed income, what would that be? This might be maybe your Social Security benefits or a defined benefit pension, like if you taught school or you were a police officer or a firefighter or you worked for a large corporation that had a pension. It could also be an annuity that guarantees you income if you live to be 120, even if you run out of money at age 85. But this bucket here is my favorite. Most people came to me and they didn't have anything in this one until they met me. This is where I would suggest you have up to 60% of your retirement income in this bucket. And it is what we call the tax-free bucket. So I'm going to go into an explanation of the downfalls when you retire of having too much money here or here or here, and how to get it from these over into here so that 60% of your income is tax-free. In fact, it doesn't even show up on your tax return. How would that be? The IRS knows you're receiving this, but it's not taxable. So let me tell you why this is so significant. I have clients that when they first came to me prior to retiring, they were proud that they had enough investments where they could get, let's say, $200,000 of income in retirement. Let's say over here that 40,000 of it was coming from Social Security benefits, or 40,000 was coming from their school teacher's pension or whatever. So they had 40,000 of the 200,000 coming from this bucket. Guess where the other 160,000 was coming from? Either here or here. In other words, it was all showing up on their tax return, all 200,000. And I'd say, hey, you got a problem here. They go, well, look, I have 200,000 of retirement income. That's, I think, all I will ever need. I go, well, with inflation and everything else, and you have a lot of money over here. In the market, if the market were to crash 40%, which it's done many times, could you still take money out of here? Ooh, no, I'd be in trouble. So I think you're too top heavy in this one over here, because this is all showing up on your tax return every time you take money out, because you tax deferred it. If they had a bunch of real estate, they'd say, oh, I owned these apartments and so forth, and I have income coming over there. I said, well, you've had some tax benefits, but now that you have been paying off that real estate, you don't have those benefits anymore, and you're sort of stuck, you think, because you don't want to pay the capital gain tax, but you think this is the cat's meow, but you just shared with me that, oh, golly, I'm getting tired of being a landlord. I wish I could just sell these and forget. I just want to relax. And yet, if you hire a property manager, you have to be very careful. I have heard horror stories of people who hired property managers, and they found out a year or two later that the property manager was embezzling money, collecting more rent, was not reporting all of the income, and it was horrible. So if you're going to hire a property manager, make sure that it's very transparent and you can see what they're doing and they know what they're doing. So sometimes people think, oh, I've got good income coming from here or my pension. The problem is it's all showing up on the front of your 1040 tax return. And I would say, yeah, that's the problem. It's all showing up on your 1040. And they go, well, how do you not do that? It's actually relatively easy. In a period of 5 years, if they came to me at age 60, because many of them after age 59 and a half, they might hear me on the radio. And I would be saying, you know, it's time to get some of the money out. The tax is over and done with and repositioned into something tax-free from now on. This is called a strategic rollout. And so many times in 5 years, I would get the bulk of the money out of here. I would recommend no more than 30% of your money be in yet to be taxed IRAs and 401ks in the market at retirement. In fact, most people, when they came and saw what I was doing, they would get all of it out. Sometimes in 5 years, get the taxes over and done with. Where would they put the net after-tax money? See, people think you only pull out the money if you're going to spend it. No, you get it out, get the taxes over with when tax rates are lower and maybe your values are lower in a market crash, and then you reposition the net after-tax money over here and you ride the market back up again tax-free. You want to have tax-free income so you're immune from taxes going up in the future. So in a period of 5 years, I would get about 120,000 of that 200,000 off of their tax return down to here. What was the impact? They have the same 200,000 of income, but they're keeping 40,000 more of it for themselves. Because on that 120,000 that I transferred out of here down to here, now it's tax-free. They were paying 40,000 bucks, a third of 120,000 in tax. So if a husband and wife were to live another 20 or let's say 25 years, what's 25 years of an extra 40,000 bucks that would otherwise go down the drain in unnecessary tax? That's an extra $1 million. I have helped many, many people enhance their retirement by $1 million by simply doing this strategic conversion, strategic rollout from money here down to the tax-free bucket. So let me summarize how you can take advantage of this opportunity. So people, including CPAs and tax attorneys, would then ask me, well, what's tax-free? And that's when I would share with them sections of the Internal Revenue Code if I was teaching an advanced continuing education class to CPAs and tax attorneys. And I would say, have you ever heard of sections 72E? 7702 and 101A? Yeah, but remind me what they say. I said Section 72E of the Internal Revenue Code has been around forever, even before the code. That's where the IRS says any money inside of a properly structured insurance contract will grow tax-free, interest, dividends, or whatever. But if you're structuring that contract to provide living tax-free income benefits more than just for the insurance that comes along for the ride when you do it this way, it turns into a cash cow for tax-free retirement income. In a nutshell, I have earned an average of about 11% for the last 25 years, and I net 10.07. Where's the difference? That 1% is not tax. That 1 percentage point difference between the 11% that I'm actually earning and the 10% that I'm netting, so that every million I have generates $100,000 a year of tax-free income. That 1% is the cost of the insurance that the IRS says has to be there or it won't be tax-free. Well, what about a tax-deferred IRA or 401k? How about that bucket? Well, I have to earn 15%, pay tax of a third, 5% of that 15 to net 10. I would rather only have to earn 11 and net 10 and have some insurance coming along for the ride, because when I die, anything left behind in the tax-free bucket increases in value. For example, if I were to die right now and I left behind $1 million in my laser fund, that $1 million in my laser fund, which is tax-free, would blossom to about $2.5 million. And people say, how much does that cost? Well, it was the 1% difference between the 11 that I'm earning and the net of 10 that gave me tax-free cash flow. So it didn't really cost me at the end of the day. It made my spouse, my children, an extra $2.5 million. There's not an IRA or 401k around that will do that. So what's happening here? I'm taking my money and I'm rolling it out of an IRA or 401k, getting the taxes over and done with. This is called a strategic rollout. Then the key is you want to reposition the after-tax monies into a laser fund, a tax-free vehicle that will continue to give you tax-free growth and income forevermore. You're immune from taxes going up in retirement. How awesome is that? But you're able to participate when the market goes up, but when the market goes down, you don't lose because you're using indexing strategies, which I teach in my various episodes and also over here with my various books that I've written. I've written 11 books. The laser fund is my favorite vehicle because it allows you to accumulate, access, and transfer your money tax-free under those sections of the code. And when CPAs and tax attorneys would learn this, they'd go, oh my heavens, I have heard about it, but I never understood it. I always told my clients to just put their money in IRAs or 401ks. I'm embarrassed to go back and tell them that wasn't the best. I said, well, you did what you thought was good, but it was a far cry from the best. So in essence, people sometimes will sell their real estate and even pay the capital gain and put the net into a portfolio of laser funds. And I've written a book to explain this, and they're shocked when the laser funds provide more cash flow tax-free than their real estate apartments or their rental properties were generating for them even before tax. And they were like, what? I don't have to evict tenants anymore? I don't have to manage this? What am I going to do with my time? Well, I would relax and enjoy retirement and not worry about your money. The money comes out of the tax deferred bucket, out of the real estate. If you want guaranteed income, you could get an annuity that will pay you an income if you live to be 120, even if you run out of money. But I would recommend that between 40 to 60% of your retirement income comes from the tax-free bucket. My favorite is the laser fund. Municipal bonds could do it, but the laser fund has always earned at least 2% higher than municipal bonds. Roths could do it, but I've also earned at least 2% higher than most Roths earn. And the laser fund has 6 advantages compared to a Roth that only has 2. I can put in big lump sums. I can take it out. I can make up for lost years. You can't do that with a Roth. I can access money for any reason, even before age 59 and a half. You can't do that with a Roth. And I can ride the market up, but when the market goes down, I don't lose. If your Roth's in the market, you can't do that. And Roths do not blossom in value when you die. So why would you own one of those? I prefer the laser fund. And so what I want you to do is learn. I've written this book. It is 14 chapters on this side. It gives you all kinds of charts and graphs and explanations of what the laser fund is. If you learn more by stories, you flip the book over and you read this side, about 100 pages, 12 chapters with 62 actual client stories and examples of how the laser fund can be used for tax-free accumulation, access, and transfer for your business, for your kids' college funding, for real estate management, but especially for retirement. So at retirement planning is way more important than what you did for retirement planning to make sure you don't outlive your money. So I want to gift you a copy of this book, which is actually 2 books in one, absolutely free. I'll pay for the book. You pay $5.95 shipping and handling, and I'll fire one out. And you'll also have the opportunity if you go to laserfund.com, and you can also get audio versions, digital versions, and also I have video master classes, because this book will help you diversify and create the foundation for a tax-free retirement. So here's to your better future.